you have, in that report, you have made a statement, have you not, that from 12:20:50 a.m. on January 29th of 2022 and after, there is no indication of interaction with the device. Is that correct?
There is no indication of user interaction with the device. There is all received until about 6:04 a.m. when there is again Apple Health data that picks up.
I'll ask it again. And you can feel free to turn to page 1529 in that report.
Page 15?
Page 15, 1529.
The report is.
Would you like the page
pages.
of the report or the page NDA number at the bottom? I can do either way.
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying page 15 in the report.
No. It's NDAO 1529
yes.
or page 7, whatever way
Page
is
7. Okay, Roger.
Okay, so page 7, you see there's a heading interactive phone activity, correct?
Yes.
And at the top it says, using a variety of different artifacts, we can see active interaction with the mobile device up until 12:20.
Yeah, you have to
Slow down. Okay, sorry about that. I'm just trying to move it along, but I will be slower. I'll repeat. Using a variety of different artifacts, we can see active interaction with the mobile device up until 12:20:50 a.m. ET. You see that statement?
Yes.
And that if you skip down, I'm going to skip a couple sentences to the paragraph under the chart, and this is the key part.
Okay.
It says, from that point, and I'm understanding that point to be the 12:20:50 a.m., correct? You need to say yes or no, I'm sorry.
Yes.
There is no indication of interaction with the device. Did I read that correctly?
That is correct.
So I am going to, and you believe that statement is correct?
Until 6 something a.m.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just asking if that statement is correct. Not if you have other information, but is that statement correct?
I object.
Can you answer that? Ms. Hyde, can you answer that, yes or no?
Did I read that correctly?
You read it correctly,
Thank
yes.
you. If we could, Your Honor, have a document that is put up already in evidence and publish Exhibit 39.
Okay.
And it will be, thank you. And if we could go to slide 82, please. Ms. Hyde, if I could draw your attention to the entry that is, it says 3209 under app lock, but we know that the 00 is a 12. So it's 12:32:09 a.m. on January 29, 2022. And I'm going to read what it says in red, and this is a timeline of Mr. Whiffen. You know Mr. Whiffen?
I do know Mr. Whiffen.
And so he put in red, not us, he said device locked with lock button for the last time. Do you see that?
I do.
And you know that to lock a phone, you actually have to hit the side button with regard to an iPhone to make it lock. Do you know that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that is an interaction with a phone, is it not?
I concur.
So that means that that interaction with the phone occurred at 12:32:09, correct?
I did not review that specific artifact. I cannot attest Mr. Whiffen's exam, only to my own.
So do you have any reason to believe that what is in evidence in this case that Mr. Whiffen has produced, and that do you have any basis to contest the fact that the device was locked with a lock button for the last time on the phone of John O'Keefe at 12:32:09 as you sit here?
I cannot contest it because I do not recall looking at that specific artifact.
Don't you think it would have been appropriate to be accurate as a digital forensic analyzer on the topic of the last of an indication of interaction with the device? Don't you think it would have been appropriate to look at that 12:32:09 in any of the tools you said you used on direct?
I did not correlate that artifact in my timeline.
I understand you didn't, and my question is, you make a statement. Well, let me back up. Do you understand that in this case, as in many cases, that matters of seconds in activity can be determinative of a case? Do you understand that from your experience?
Absolutely.
So it's important, therefore, to get activity right for any data forensic examiner when they're issuing reports about activity, particularly of a decedent. Is that important?
Absolutely.
So isn't it correct that the statement that you make on page 7 of your report, that from that point, 12/20/50, there is no indication of interaction with the device, is incorrect?
I cannot make that without going back and reviewing and validating the artifact you just produced from Mr. Whiffen. I would need to validate that in order to respond to that.
But as you sit here, you have no basis to contest what Mr. Whiffen has stated, that there was a lock button on the side of the phone of Mr. O'Keefe a full 12 minutes after you say there was no interaction with the device. Is that correct?
I don't. I would have to review that portion.
Is there anything that had prevented you from reviewing that in that data before you wrote this report?
Not that I can think of. I would have to go and re-review that.
My question is...
I don't know if that artifact, I have not reviewed that artifact, so I cannot speak to an artifact I have not reviewed, and I did not, that is not my report, that's Mr. Whiffen's report, so I cannot speak to that without going back and reviewing that evidence.
Isn't the interaction with the device, a lock button, readily available to you in the data that you have and had in your possession when you wrote this report?
Yes.
Thank you. So in the conclusion, you state that starting at 12:01 a.m. on January 29, 2022, the mobile phone was in use with activity of Waze navigating to 34 Fairview Drive, Canton, MA, active interaction with the screen, steps, audio playing text messages and calls until 12:31 a.m. EST on January 29, 2002. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
That statement is also incorrect, isn't it?
On what basis?
Do you believe that statement is correct or incorrect?
I believe that the statement is correct regarding those artifacts that are mentioned in that statement, yes.
Okay. And do you see an entry that says 12:31:56, which is the same time in the conclusion, but I'm going to develop it?
I believe I know where you're going.
Well, hold on. I'm sorry. I need to ask the
apologize.
questions.
Yes.
I appreciate you looking to help, but if I could, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So it's got health steps, and it has steps 36, duration 20.9 or 20.398 seconds. Did I read that correctly?
That is absolutely correct.
So if you look at this data point in your report on page 13, the steps began at 12:31:56, but they ended 20.39 seconds later at 12:32:16. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So therefore, your statement in your conclusion, if you could go back to 50, and this is in your conclusion, your statement there is that the steps, the mobile phone is used with activity, including steps, until 12:31 a.m. EST. That should read until 12:32:16, correct?
It depends on your interpretation of interaction. As a user is walking, they're not actively interacting with their device. It's their movement that is. It's not direct interaction with the screen. But I would agree to your view that that could be interpreted as needing an additional 20 seconds.
Isn't the more correct way to state the conclusion that the active interaction when it comes to steps is not calibrating using the screen, but the phone is calculating steps taken? Isn't that correct?
That is correct, but that's not interactivity with the device.
I understand,
Yes.
but the sentence reads, includes steps, and the more accurate way to have stated that would have been to put 12:32:16 instead of 12:31 a.m., correct?
I'm sorry, you just said 12:30. I did this to the minute, not to the second. Could you rephrase what you were citing?
Well, I'll state it again.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So isn't the more correct way to state this important data point in your conclusion, instead of saying active interaction with the screen and steps, etc., until 12:31 a.m. EST, the 12:31 should be 12:32, because the steps that you have on your page 13, by what you concede, is the duration of 20 would have brought it to 12:32:16, correct?
I would state that depends. I believe either is a correct way to state that. Based on interactivity, based on your interpretation, your definition is more correct.
Okay, thank you. And it's not my interpretation. I'm reading from your report, correct?
Your interpretation that 1232 is a more correct representation of interaction is based on your theory that interaction concludes when the steps end. And I'm saying both would be acceptable.
Okay, so let's follow up on this.
Sure.
Isn't it correct that it isn't my theory when the steps ended?
Oh, it's not,
if I
agree.
could just finish,
Please, absolutely,
because if we
sorry.
talk over each other, the stenographer's not going to get both of us. Thank
Agreed.
you. So it's not my theory, it's just the simple math from an entry you've made on page 13 that the steps began at 12:31:56, they ended 20.398 seconds after that, which, just doing the simple math, is 12:32:16. Did I do the math correctly?
That is correct.
Okay,
I'm not
thank you.
debating that.
Thank you very much. If you could please go to Apple Health Data Steps. And we've been talking about steps because they're important enough that you put them in a report, correct?
That is correct.
So let's go to an important data point, therefore, in your report, in the chart, which is the second entry, which is, as you've stated, 12:21:10 a.m. Do you see that?
I do.
And you note under the data that John O'Keefe's phone registered 80 steps at 12:21:10. Did I read that correctly?
You did read that correctly.
And those 80 steps constituted 191.253 seconds, as you state, correct?
That is what is stored in that database, correct?
And is my math correct, so that the jury understands this perhaps a little better?
Sure.
That 191.253 seconds equals 3.2 minutes?
Approximately, yes.
Approximately.
I'm doing the math in my head, so that's why I said approximately.
Right. Understood. So am I reading this entry correct, that you're stating what the data shows, that 80 steps were taken by the phone of whomever had the phone of Mr. O'Keefe? There were 80 steps taken at 12:21:10 a.m. on January 29, 2022, for a length of time of 3.2 minutes.
That is what the phone registered.
That's what the phone registered. Very well.